Good evening on this Sunday, February 16th. Hope you are all doing great. Hope you've had a relaxing weekend. Um, Today I'm going to do a book review on one of the most recent books that I read. This was a book. I've been very interested lately in learning more about I guess some people call it the Fae, fairies, the hidden folk, right? So I read this book by Robert Kirk. He's the author of the book. The book is called The Secret Commonwealth of Elves, Fawns and Fairies. Now, this is to us a pretty ancient book because it was written in, I believe it was the 17th century, in the 1600s, in the late 1600s. It was written by what we can call a pastor of a church. He was like a Protestant Christian pastor. And he was sent to the Scottish Highlands to be a pastor. And in his sort of getting acquainted with how life was, how people were in the Scottish Highlands, he was introduced to this belief about all sorts of what we can call maybe paranormal phenomena, especially people's ability to see things like elves, fairies, and even the dead, right? Those who have passed on. So this was a short book. I believe it was only maybe 100 pages long, if that. And it had a lot of great references to famous people throughout history, especially like literary authors. They make reference to Sir Walter Scott, um, Samuel Coleridge, and there are also several scriptural references about things like the afterlife or maybe appearances of people who have then passed away and have appeared in the world again. Um, so it was very interesting, this book, to see someone who was not a native like Highlander, someone who did not grow up with that belief system in elves and fairies, and he was sort of coming at the topic as a student, as somebody who was curious about what the people where he found himself believed. So, a lot of the stories that he gives about people's interactions with elves and fairies, he collected from his parishioners, from the people who he was in the care of preaching to. And one thing which I found particularly interesting is that I think a lot of, especially during this time, this is something that they discuss in the book. A lot of people who prescribed to the Christian faith may see things like invisible beings, maybe messing with the physical world in a way that we don't understand, as maybe being like something kind of evil, something. If we can say like maybe something like demonic or something, but he didn't approach it that way. He sort of approached it from a much more open-minded perspective, and he sort of really gave credence to his parishioners' beliefs, and he sort of admitted that there are many things which, as far as in the spiritual astral world, that we really don't understand, that we don't have access to, and that maybe other people do, that other people are able to see things and experience things that maybe the majority of us are not keen to. So yeah, so he gives a lot of stories, a lot of anecdotes of just different times when he was affected, or what when he himself was a part of certain situations that were unexplainable. There are some stories about people being able to see or having premonitions of when other people were going to pass away. And not only when they were going to pass away, but how they were going to pass away. Um, so yeah. Um, what else? Um, some of the stories which he gives, I guess we can maybe we would term as being like trickster spirits, sort of messing with humans. So like a lot of the time, he explains that there were certain places where if people walked through those places, there will be rocks hurled at them from things you couldn't see, right? You can hear whispers and whistling of people talking, but there was nobody around. So these sort of phenomena, which is like it's, I guess we would just say that it's unexplainable, and not only unexplainable, but it's like somebody's playing tricks on you, somebody's kind of messing with you. And in many instances, people would not really get hurt, like when they came face to face with these sort of entities, they wouldn't get hurt, but they were certainly confused, uncertain, and didn't really understand what was going on. Another thing that he discusses at length is the idea of the second sight. The second sight is essentially, he says, there are a lot of Scottish Highlanders during this time that had the ability to see things that other people could not see. So he called the second sight. This could range not only from things like elves and fairies, but also to seeing into the spiritual world, seeing into the future, seeing into premonitions of people's death, of people's future, of who they might marry, of where they might end up. So he talked at length about the Scottish Highlanders, certain people who he would call seers, right? Seers who had this second sight. And one interesting thing that he talked about was that some of these Highlanders who had this ability to see uh, the invisible world, when they were transferred from the Scottish Highlands to another part of the world, like some of them made trips to America, the United States, to the Caribbean during this time period, their ability to see the invisible world was either greatly diminished or disappeared altogether. So he wondered if this was an ability that was native to the Scottish Highlands, right? Although, of course, he does compare that there are seers and people with a second sight in other cultures of the world. It was his experience that the people who were seers, who had this extraordinary ability, um, their ability to see and use this ability was limited to sort of residing in in Scotland, right? So yeah, it was a great book. I was fascinated from beginning to end. I loved the point of view that he brought in. I really liked that he was not, like, in a way, like knocking down these people's beliefs or just simplifying it as being like something evil, something that we can relate to being like of a Christian spiritual dark nature. Like, he didn't see it that way. He was really trying to adopt the view of the people who themselves had experienced these things. What did they think that this was? How did they explain it? Right? What was their worldview in the Scottish Highlands before he even got there? Right? And from what I understand, I believe that him being an Englishman, he came to the Scottish Highlands sort of like on appointment by the English. This must have been a time period where the English were. He claimed that the English were usurpers at the time, which is part of the reason why he was there, right? So they were not native. He himself was not native to the Scottish Highlands, right? So he wasn't trying to impose his Christian beliefs on his parishioners and the Highlanders' experiences with the paranormal, but he was really trying to adopt their worldview, to understand their worldview. So that kind of perspective that he brought to it, I was very interested by. I also thought it was fascinating that this was written in the 1600s, right? It was just such an old book, Yeah, it is the late 17th century. So just the fact that it was such an old book, hundreds of years old, and the fact that we have all of these, what he insists are credible tales of the fairy world, of elves, of trolls, of fairies. This is not written as a fictional account, right? It really reads as historical. He talks about the people who were in government at the time, in England and in Scotland. So there's a lot of um, like references to actual like dates and people that can be corroborated, right? So just to read a little bit of the summary of what the book says, right? So it says that in the late 17th century, this minister, Robert Kirk, went looking for supernatural creatures. And these creatures were in a middle nature between man and angels, right? So it says Robert Kirk roamed the Highlands, talking to his parishioners and other country folk about their encounters with fairies, wraiths, elves, doppelgangers, and other agents of the spirit world. Magic was a part of everyday life for Kirk and his fellow Highlanders, and this remarkable book offers rare glimpses into their enchanted realm. Left in manuscript form upon the author's death in 1692, this volume was first published in 1815 at the behest of Sir Walter Scott. In 1893, the distinguished folklorist Andrew Lang re-edited the work. Lang's introduction to Kirk's extraordinary blend of science, religion, and superstition is included. So that's a little bit, and this one was published by Dover Publications. So anyways, yep, that was one of the most recent books that I read, and I thought it was very interesting, and just wanted to share it with you all in case you all are also interested in learning about things like the paranormal, the unexplainable, right? The fairy realm. So yeah, thank you for listening. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Bye.